Are you able to hear the background noise from me? Should I go in another
Nope.
room?
You're good, Roger.
Yeah.
Gotta love Zoom's filtering.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the pub and there's background music. So if you can't hear it, we're all good.
Nice. Cool. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to our first Ask Me Anything. My name is Pulkit Agrawal, also go by PK, and I'm the founder and CEO of The Fifth Ingredient. Super excited to be here and open to just answering questions, having a discussion, chatting about anything Beer30 related, Fifth Ingredient, entrepreneurship, startups, all the fun stuff. So yeah, just open forum, no agenda. I know that Austin and Zach had a couple of questions that were emailed in, but other than that, totally open to whatever questions and things people have or want to talk about.
Well, that's quiet.
Kirby, I know you had some ideas. You want us to get started?
Yeah, and I'll try my video so that
There
it
we
can
go.
be more attuned. Okay, I won't start with the question that I just led with. I will start with, I think, a broader question. One of the things that would be super helpful, and I don't know if it's in the work, is you guys have like a ton of good data in the system, but at this point, a lot of it is just available in like snapshot views. So like at month end, if I want a value and I need it as of that date, pretty much the only thing I can do is take a screenshot of a lot of things. And I don't have necessarily the ability to download things to like Excel or CSVs in all instances. Some of them you do. I'm trying to think through. It's been a minute because I'm just now working through month end, and every month end I have to refresh myself. But a lot of the reporting, like the barrel program, for example, it's like you can see that there's 60 barrels in this tank, but there's no way to drill down into what makes up that 60 barrels.
Talking about
and the data is
barrel aging in particular, or
yeah, that's been a big issue of ours, like just the disconnect between the barrel aging program and the kind of the rest of the system.
Yeah. So Kirby, the barrel aging, there is a revamp that's happening on it. I believe it'll be in the next almost 2 to 3 weeks that there will be rolled out. So we can definitely, Zach's taking notes as well, and we can definitely follow up afterwards to get you some better dates on when the work in process side for barrel aging is going to be live. But I think that's probably one of the only areas in the system where you can't download the CSV. But otherwise, for snapshot, for transfer data, for all other areas of the system, you should be able to always download a CSV. So that way you have full access to that information.
Nice.
Hey, Hugh. Hey, Matt. Hey, Katie. Hey. Yeah. So cool. Roger, did you have something as well?
No, I was just thinking until Kirby said barrel aging, I've been able to get most of the things I need at month end from, like the work in process stuff. That new brewers report is really good. And then on some of the other process reports, if I need to see what my finished goods inventory was at the end of the month, for instance, for LCC excise taxes, that's able to, I can dial back the date on that, see what it looked like at that time, which I found very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. So Kirby, yeah, barrel aging is definitely on the roadmap. So that'll be a good one from that side of it.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. Kaiju team, any questions on your end or thoughts just hanging out?
Sorry, I came a little late. Is this regarding the barrel program specifically, or just any questions with Beer30?
Any questions, man? This is the first Ask Me Anything. We're giving this a go, seeing how this plays out. So ask questions, tell stories, give all your fun, anecdotes.
I guess one of the simple ones, I've got a few notes, but right now when we start a brew with a mash in, we don't have the ability at this stage to have multiple mash-ins at the same time. It's always just different turns of the same brew. And we doing things like we're getting our cider from the orchard in, and we're unable to start that. We have to wait for the brew to finish.
Wait, just hit the start button down here, and you can have as many brands and batches happening at the same time.
Can you? I feel like, unless I've gotten that wrong, you can have completely different ones going at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a core functionality for a few years now, like even from the very beginning. So you can see here, I have a champagne, I have a lager, I have an IPA, hazy IPA, all of them mashing in at the same time. So you can have as many as you'd like. Just hit that green start button.
Can you humor me? Can you click select below and start? Can you start one and
Yeah,
then
I'll
have a
click
second one going with a different
Pilsner,
brand?
German
Thank you.
Pilsner batch 1, 2, 3 into rich. Start the brew. And now when I mash in, I have my German Pilsner that I can do a subset for, or I can
Yeah.
do my IPA and do another subset for, and have as many of those as I like.
Okay, cool. Doesn't all come out the same.
So if I do my German Pilsner, let's say subset 1, it has all the notes associated with it, the water additives, the lot numbers that tie in with it, getting into some of the other ingredients as well, in
Yeah.
order to mash. And then I can start the mash associated with it. And when it goes to the next page, I have my German Pilsner along with my lager, along with my hazy IPA. So all of them are happening at the same time.
Okay, cool. That does work that way. Perfect. The only other thing that I've noted here, for we're logging through Beer30 all our CIP and cleaning functions. In the CIP element there, it's got it down as events. I'm wondering if there's a function, so instead of doing individual tanks and selecting individual chemicals and whatnot, if there's any way of just having it set as like a template, like if we can preset, we use this amount, it'll be this volume, and we just select just the tank. And we can make it so it's just easier to use for some of the other guys who are just starting out with Beer30 or new to using a CIP function. If there's a quick and easy way just to be, this tank's getting this tank's getting that, without having to do as much changing of like stock on hand for chemicals. Because I believe right now, do you have in CIP that it's linked to the stock on hand for like caustic or sand?
No, they're not linked up together. They're currently independent.
Yep.
So what you could do, Hugh, there is on the CIP name, you could actually add in the full recipe. So let's say it's caustic at 80 Celsius for 30 minutes. You could create that as the actual recipe, add that as a CIP type. And then when I go ahead and pick the tank that it's tying in with, it'll then show up here as one of the actual actions that's there. So that way they know exactly that needs to get done. And then the other cool thing about that is from the dashboard, you could actually go in and actually on the task list side, you could even schedule it out where I can go ahead for CIP, pick the exact, type out exactly what I need to do and say CIP full system and pick the tank that it goes in. So that way it's actually tied in as part of the actual tank side of things as well.
Awesome. And then it'll just be manually though changing our quantities of how much like caustic we used or sanitizer that.
Exactly, that would be manual. I would suggest adding in some custom fields if you'd like, because you can do custom fields throughout the system that tie in with chemical volume units, things like that. Because the beauty behind that ends up being that you could actually start tracking how people are actually doing compared to the recipe, right? So if the recipe is saying, oh, 80 degrees Celsius, maybe somebody actually ended up doing 95, or they ended up doing 20, or 20 degrees plus or minus. So you could actually start figuring that out and then start checking out units and go from there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Glad we got those two squared away.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kirby, go for it.
I know, I was like, I have more questions, but I don't want to like overtake. I always will have questions about just kind of the financial side, so I don't know how much it'll be pertinent to the brewers, but what about, because currently the way that it's set up to get costing for your beers is like every single batch has a cost you have to go in and individually pull. Is there any plans in the future? Because it's like, I'd like to be able to see like an entire brand and what their costs are doing. But currently the only way I've been able to do it is to go in and every single brew I have to export separately, put them into my own Excel spreadsheet, consolidate them, and get an average.
Sure. If you actually go down on the left side of brand history, you can pick the exact brand. And so I'll use the brown sugar ale as an example. And it's going to have every batch ever done that you can export as a CSV and have the averages right underneath as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been in the system, sorry, in a little bit, so.
Yeah, it looks like the totals, though, right? But you could get the averages out if you got the CSV, certainly.
Right,
Well,
as long as I've got the
the
CSV, I
averages,
can
yeah.
get the totals.
Yeah, for some of these are the averages of cost per barrel. It shows
Ah.
you the average per case down here as well, and you can adjust it as needed.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I like that COGS targeting stuff, that's good.
And then the other report here for everybody is if you go down to the process section, you can actually run COGS reports where I can pick a start date and end date. And then let's say I'm looking at this previous quarter, I can start seeing the brands and batches and then start comparing them based off of variances on what the set target COGS actually were as well. And then for everybody's awareness, I do want to emphasize that you can always log into Beer30 and click on WhatsApp support, and it'll actually open up to your particular brewery's group. It'll say Beer30 plus your brewery's name there. And you can always hit up the support team as often as you'd like with questions, getting on a screen share, answering, more specific items that are pertinent to your brewery. Because I know we're just looking at demo data right now, but we can definitely dive in with analysis on your brewery as well.
That's cool. I didn't realize you had the screen sharing function there, because I just go in through the WhatsApp app
Me too,
and
yeah.
have the chat. So that's kind of neat. I like
What was
that.
that?
I didn't realize you could go in, that link would take you to a place where you could share screens.
Well, so
Oh.
WhatsApp is actually for computers as well and phones. So
Yeah.
at that point, you can just take the screenshots. But in this case, this is more just showing that there's a chat that's available.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, I'm jabbering here. Really minor thing, but I know you're working on tasks and scheduling and stuff like that. One of the things that has caught me occasionally is when I'm creating a task on the schedule, some of the dialogues allow you to choose multiple users, and some of them only, it's a list of users and you can click off multiple people. Other ones, you can only choose one person to do the task, like packaging tasks. And so I'm wondering, is that something that's going to get normalized in the future?
So when you're looking at it from here, for example, or you can assign it to multiple people.
Yeah, so in that one you can do that, but if you were to create a task off of schedule and say, all right, let's create a packaging task or something. Now in that screen, you can't assign it to anybody at all at first.
Well, that's because this is designed to be more planned packaging for the future. So
Okay.
the idea here is if you're looking at like 2 to 3 weeks out, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily know who's going to be doing it at that point, or even 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
So the idea is that once you actually go through the brew itself, it'll turn it into an actual task. And at that point, you can then assign it to different people.
Because if you go ahead and go back to the other screen, just create a new packaging task.
Like a planned packaging one? Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then just create a dummy there and then go back and click into it. So now if you double click that,
yeah,
you're only allowed to assign one user.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we can make a note of that. That should actually just be that in theory, it should allow you to add any users because it's still planned packaging.
Yeah, you think it'd be the same layout, but anyway, so it's a minor nit, but I was just trying to see which direction you're going to be going as you revise things, because I like having multiple things. Now I've got an assistant. It's nice to assign us both or one or the other, or add or delete people. So
that's a good call out. Yeah, we'll make a note of that, and we'll definitely add that in as a ticket while we do the revamp for scheduling right now. That's good.
Yeah, Roger, great call out. Thanks for bringing that up.
I nitpick.
Cool. Sarah, did you have anything on your end as well?
I do. I know I sent you an email, but I have a client that is on Beer30 and he wants to start measuring profitability. And I don't know if there's a easy way to do that and I can explain it to him or if I can do it
So
for
in
him.
theory, if you're using what we spoke about earlier with the COGS targets, so let's start off there. In order to set your COGS targets, there are pretty much 3 ways to do that. The first one is if I go to my batch history, for example, and look at my brown sugar ale batch 11, I can see the actual breakdown of the COGS for this particular brand and batch. And at that point, I can see that this one is whatever actual targets that are there for that particular batch. I can then decide to set that as my actual cost of goods sold. So that saying pretty much like, hey, a 24 pack of this brown sugar ale should be 13 or 15.27. That's my new target. So that's one way to set your targets. The other one is on the brand history side, like I'd mentioned earlier, where I could go into here and I can make the adjustments for the example here of what the averages are and what the actual targets are for this brand as well. Or then alternatively, I could actually go in and in the tools section here, I can go and actually set the particular targets here as well from the COGS target side. So now I have different targets that are set up in this aspect. And now what's great about this is that if you're looking at it from a profitability side, if I actually go ahead and run a sales report, now that I have my targets that are set, if I pick that start date and end date that I really care about from the actual sales report side, you'll notice that we have both the gross total side, the discount side, the subtotals, the cost of goods sold. And so from there, you can actually go out as far out as you'd like to then understand really what the profitability is. That's really what this these columns are designed to be, with COGS total, COGS each, and depending on what you want, you can also export the raw data, the invoice totals, and break it down to really be able to compare the cost of goods compared to the actual subtotal and the gross total that's there.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that helps.
So this is a question maybe for
Roger.
everybody else on the call.
Real quick,
yeah.
Roger. So Sarah, with that as well, what I'd suggest is, since you did mention this is for a client, if you join your particular client's WhatsApp group, you can also then ask specific questions if, let's say, that some of the numbers aren't lining up like you'd want them to.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yep, for sure. Roger, what were you saying?
Yeah, so it's kind of a follow-up on that same topic, and that would be maybe a question for everybody on the call is, so the cost of goods is really good for tracking materials and all the fixed costs of components going into a product, and then obviously the price that we sold it for. Does anybody else factor in or want to factor in labor as part of the cost of the product going out there? And before I got into Beer30, I had an estimate of the time allotted to cleaning, to brewing, a brew day, washing kegs, and all that such. So, and I was able to factor that into my estimate of what I was really getting over and above just the materials cost of goods. Is that interesting to people? Or do you do it in other systems?
I do it in an Excel spreadsheet. We layer on labor, and then we layer on like our utilities costs and things like that. And we do it based on cumulative barrelage output for the year versus cumulative costs in each of those categories for the year.
One thing that I'll point out is on the left-hand side here, you do have this customizable cost category section. So this may be a really good way for you to start diving in and actually add in some forecasts for different aspects like labor and wages. And it won't give you, Roger, at like dividing it up on a per batch basis, but it could give you from a brewery level an analysis as to where those cost categories are. And you could really customize this based off of overhead, electricity, labor, cleaning time, etc. And so those can really go in at this level from a general ledger perspective and really being able to break down what those depletions look like on a monthly basis as well.
So since
Yeah,
we're
I haven't
on
played around
the,
with that, so I'll go take a look at that and WhatsApp if I have questions. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And real quick, before we move on from this, the other thing that I would want to point out is some people, for example, Roger, like let's say you end up wanting to utilize this to actually track labor as well. You could, in theory, add it as an ingredient in the system. So for example, on the canning side, like let's say that you're doing contract brewing and it's X number of dollars per case, you can add that in as an ingredient cost. Or similarly for the raw materials side, a lot of people will use the adjuncts because that's just generic. And you could add an hourly labor, for example, as an actual item that you're then adding in where it's like, cool, like on average, we're adding in 8 hourly labor units per beer. And then that can be added in as part of the cost that's there for that particular cost of goods sold.
Okay, cool. Those are great. I'll go play with those.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Kirby, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was gonna say, since we're on the costing side, when we are looking at these reports and it says like cost of goods sold, like, is it truly tracking like what items are, and I should say what beer is currently in WIP and what's still in your finished goods? So like, it's really just the cost of the beer that you have sold, not the cost of the beer that's sitting in your cooler.
So let's break that down in a couple ways. So the first thing is, if you're looking at WIP, that would end up going in the report side process WIP report. And if I
Mhm.
pick today's date, then I can see the exact dollar value for
Yep.
the beers that are there in WIP. When you go to batch history, one thing you'll notice is like, if let's say that there is a beer that's in the process still, like let's say it's in this like, bottling kegging step that's there and we've done partial batches of it, the system actually will not calculate any final goods for cost of goods summaries until you actually finish off and empty out the tank. Because one of the big differences with Beer30 and other softwares is that we actually include the losses as part of the cost of goods sold. And we can't do that in the middle step where if it's like, oh, I've packaged off 3 runs, but I still have, 30 barrels, 30 hectoliters still in the tank. Well, you may end up just having to dump all of that for a QC issue or something else. And so all of a sudden your COGS could skyrocket for that particular for that particular batch number. And so that's all a part of it from the final, once everything has been emptied out for that particular tank. And then the other cool thing about this is that when you actually start breaking it down for like splits and merges, one of the really cool things that we do is that as you actually go through the system, you have your base beer, you split it up, you merge it, you'll notice that we have this full like tank lineage that happens. So that way you can actually start seeing how that base beer is then being split up across multiple batches and really understanding how they tie in together, because the idea here is that the costs also transfer with it. So if I start off with $100 and 10 barrels, and I split that up into 3 and 7, for example, it's actually going to break it up to be $30 and $70. And then I can add pineapple into one of them, mango into the other, and the costs are actually going to keep changing. And so that's a really good way to understand that. And this is a kind of like an internal tool that we use. And at some point, this will be visible externally as well. But this is kind of how we break down from like a node tree diagram of every single split that's happened, every single merge that happens as well. So we can properly keep a track of that data along the way. Does that answer those COGS questions? Kirby, on your end as well, does that answer your questions with it?
Not sure. I'm still digesting.
Okay.
So I guess, yeah, because it's like I get where the WIP spits out and that wouldn't have an associated finished good to sell to have in your cost of goods sold. But I guess when you're looking at, I'm trying to think what report it is, where it's like, it looks like it's just factoring in, I'm gonna pull it up. Like it's just factoring in like raw material depletions and packaging depletions. When you're saying it's depleted, does that just mean that, does that correlate to it being sold? Or does that just correlate to it being used in a brew and having moved to WIP?
Well, so the way that that works, if I understand, if you're talking about like depletions, it's kind of going through it from a systematic view of raw materials and packaging supplies. So if it's raw materials, that then ties in with WIP, right? Because it's actual ingredients that are going into the tank. So it becomes WIP. When you actually package stuff off, at that point, because it's actually in finished product and finished bottles, depletions there are then being factored in for cost of goods sold. We just don't show that cost of goods sold number until you finish off the entire tank, because then we're actually aggregating the raw materials with the actual packaging supply costs themselves.
So like anytime you have a partially packaged batch at month end, you wouldn't have that in your cost of goods sold for that month. Like if you can a batch on the 30th of the month and you put that on a truck and it's gone, but you haven't finished kegging because that's not going to be done until the 1st of the month. Like that batch is not going to be factored into your cost of goods sold at all.
Correct, it would not. So it would be depleted from the WIP section. So if you're looking at, so if you really break that down, depending on what reports you're running, you could run a snapshot report. At that point, you're absolutely right. On the 30th, for example, this is going to show me all of the live inventory for raw materials. For the packaging supply side, it's going to show me the raw material inventory. So in this one, Kirby, it's going to have depleted the actual packaging supplies that have happened for the canning run.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you actually look at it from the WIP side, it's going to decrease the actual amount in the WIP side for the 30th for that particular tank. But
Yep.
yeah, there is, so technically you could piece those pieces together, but as soon as you then finish off on the 1st, it's going to give you the actual cost of goods for the packaging run, assuming, or not assuming, but actually based off of what the output of the kegs was.
Right. But if you were using the COGS report to try to like plug in your COGS to your QuickBooks or whatever at month end, you would kind of miss out on that data without looking at the snapshots.
Can you explain where you would be adding in COGS into QuickBooks?
Like I was just like, because you have a report, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find it, that's literally called like cost of goods sold.
Yeah, that would be this one, the COGS report.
So it's like if, for example, what we were just talking about, we had that brew on the 30th that was partially packaged and you ran this report from June 1st to June 30th. And we're just trying to say like, this report gives me the sum of what should be my total cost of goods sold for that month. Any partially packaged batches would not be factored into this report.
Correct, it would not be, yeah.
Okay.
It would just show you here, like just like we're showing it's an empty set, and then we have the disclaimer here that this report shows all packaging runs that happened during the completed time frame, regardless of the date the packaging run happened.
So you just have to go back to those snapshots to get the other info to kind of complete it.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Fee, Hugh, Matt, anything else from the Kaiju team?
No, I think we're good. We as you know, we run this more as inventory as opposed to the cost because we're stuck with MYOB. So this is less. I know you've got things on that.
Let's Fee, we can have a separate chat about the MyOb and Zero side and some of the wet tax stuff, because as of a few months ago, actually, if you take a look on the recipe side, we actually allow wet tax to be tied in for the actual costing side and for the excise side. So there is a whole setup associated with that as well for wet taxes.
Yeah, I remember, I think you were telling me about it ages ago and I didn't set up a Zoom with you because life.
Yeah, we rolled that July 12th, 2022. So full year, Fee, full 65 days ago.
You told me at CBC, I remember.
Yeah. So if anybody wasn't aware, we actually fully showcased our release notes from the very first code that was rolled out January 18th, 2018. So you could actually go back and see every single update, and it actually looks like the team just rolled out a few updates literally like half an hour to an hour ago. This whole set here for today's updates. So the engineering team and product team are absolutely crushing it. Cool. Other questions, others, product specific things that I could answer?
PK, we had a few write-ins. Do you want me to jump in? It looks like those folks aren't on the call.
Sure.
Cool. This first one I think is pretty, I think we've got all customers on the call currently. I think this one was from a prospect though. Which maybe is helpful for customers as well. It says, what kind of technical support and training do you offer customers who implement Beer30?
Yeah, cool. So I think the big one, like I've been emphasizing a few different times, is the customer experience team is really focusing on getting some more personalized reach outs that are happening. So Rachel, Dave, Lindsay, and Gabby have absolutely been crushing it. For the Kaiju team, for everybody's awareness, Kaiju is actually in Australia. And Kaiju team, we actually have Lindsay Gregg from Melbourne now that she's actually working full time with us as well. So you actually have somebody in your time zone explicitly as well. So again, like I mentioned, WhatsApp would be a really good way to get that go and kind of get some more trainings in. And again, we do unlimited training. So really, I think based on the different breweries, Roger, you're on top of WhatsApp every day. We know that. Kirby, in your case, I think it'd be good to have a proper call with the team as well. If you have specific questions, Sarah, in your case, I think join the Lance group and let's join as many threads as you can, because I know you have a number of different customers, and we can also set up a separate chat as well with you and Samantha and some of the others. And yeah, Kaiju team, let's actually get up a demo set up to go into MyOb and Zero if you're keen on making that happen.
Sounds good. Does that mean you're getting sleep now?
No, it just means I'm doing other things other than customer support at 11 p.m. Eastern. So still fun, still always work to do. See?
PK, looking at the list, other questions are probably more just folks that aren't on Beer30 yet, probably not super relevant for our customers on the call. So
Cool.
I reckon we could reach out to those folks directly.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
This is actually really cool. I mean, for the people that are on the call, what do you think about this type of Q&A customer focused session? We've never done something like this before. So I personally really like it. It's like, being in the hot seat and just asking a bunch of random Beer30 questions. But any thoughts on that from your end, especially because this is the first one we're holding?
I think it's really cool. It's nice to be able, because I think that probably half the problems that we have at our brewery, at least, are just you guys release updates so quickly that I can't keep up like with what's changed. So it's nice to come in and get shown a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, huge, like the starting multiple batches is one of the core functionalities. And I think in your case, Kaiju was trained almost 3.5, 4 years ago at this point. So a refresher course could definitely be worth it in terms of any specific questions that you may have on utilization.
Yes, please. I think there has been some people come and some people go, and then the understanding of some concepts haven't been handed down. So there was like a fear that all batches might be finished or that it would affect an ongoing brew in the system. So that's good. Yes, please. That might be very helpful.
We'll make a note to follow up with 2 different things: one, a training session, and then 2, a separate, discussion about the accounting side as well with fee.
Yeah, it might be interesting. Excuse me. Send out a poll to customers and find out if they're workflows or different interaction topics that people are interested in, and then you could focus training sessions on that based on your input, right? Our input. And yeah, I think having the first one of these where we all kind of came into it blind of what are you looking for, what's it going to roll out to. Some of the questions are really good, and how do we do this business function? If we're able to plan on that, and then as we get more of these going, we get more comfortable knowing, oh, these are the kinds of things to talk about and bring up. I think you're going to get good value out of it, and so will we, of course, is really understanding and learning from each other that way and good questions.
It's almost like office hours, so that way it's kind of just like open-ended office hours, and kind of maybe the month of August we have one that's mainly brew and process specific, and then September we end up doing more that's distribution and accounting focus, and kind of go back and forth, so that way people end up having the right people on the call, right? So that way everybody's still gaining something that's relevant for their particular departments and needs, if we kind of split up the brewing process with the actual accounting and distro side.
Yeah, and then maybe like major new features like the demand planning, which is really cool. Have a session on your best practices that you anticipated based on the inputs that drove that feature set, right?
Yeah, we could have a good product release one as well. So Austin, Zach, that's a good follow-up. I think real quick for everybody that is on the call, if you aren't aware, some of the other really big features are tying in with this demand planning report of being able to enter in the sales forecast and really what's coming up from a sales lens month over month, the production forecast, and really understanding what beers are going through which tanks to be able to really optimize it into a really cool demand report. So that way you can start seeing, well, month over month, how quickly are you actually going to fall short of whatever beer or whatever cider, whatever product that you need. So this becomes a really cool way to really optimize what's going on from a demand planning perspective as well.
Will that, I missed the start, sorry, I was driving. But will this be able to do like kegs, for example, so that we could upload that, say like we use like Kegstar, which is MicroStar, so they're just merging us onto their system. So would we be able to potentially pull that demand out based on what we think we're going to be doing or with that sales, so that we're not double handling to get those numbers out?
So
like
you could enter it in manually right now. There isn't anything in the scope for integration with MicroStar or
I mean more like being able to get it like a CSV kind of something or other out, so we could do it like as in just so we could manipulate that for for whatever system.
In theory, you could get it out from their system and then manually add it into here. You could type it in, that could work out, and then you can export it. One of the updates down the road here would be theoretically tying it with exporting out of demand planning as a CSV as well. Right now it just allows you to copy and paste it and go from there. But yeah, in theory, you could take the MicroStar velocities that are there and go from that from a demand report. But
I'm more thinking forward, so using our production, so using what we think we're going to need, right? And then you've got like, if you've got your sales and stuff in Beer30, what we've packed or whatever, and then whether or not it'd be able to spit out a number saying, okay, if you've got this product put in this many times on your demand plan, then would that then trickle down and say, oh, you're going to need this many boxes or this many wraps or whatever?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Fee. So that actually ties in fully with our schedule, MRP, and demand planning modules. Gotcha. So effectively the demand planning with kind of how many kegs you need from a sales perspective, that actually then it will then eventually feed into the MRP side to be able to then break down exactly how many cans, pack text, labels, etc. you need on a week by week basis. And then currently, even if you don't have the demand planning module, if you actually start using the scheduling module, you can actually double click into different cells and actually plan out what the overall tanks and the overall packaging runs will be. And so in theory, you could actually add in exactly what you need from all the different keg sizes. And you could say, great, like I need to have for this packaging run, I could go ahead and say, oh, cool, I want to have 20-liter, 30-liter kegs. Or if you want to worry about this from the packaging supply side, you could actually add in a number of Kegstar, Convoy, One-Way, Kegcraft, etc. And so you could actually then use that to drive your MRP as well.
Cool, awesome, thanks.
And then there is going to be down the road some more integration, some more data streams with like third-party apps that we're looking at. So that'll be cool, more like a Q4, Q1 of next year project. Cool. Any other questions? I like this. This is fun. No? We good? Well, cool. Well, before we wrap up, let's just take a quick screenshot because this is actually a really fun time that we did this. So as you all know, I'm a huge selfie taker at conferences. So perfect timing. All right, everybody smile. 1, 2, 3, cheers. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining the first Ask Me Anything. And I think we're gonna do some more of this. This was really cool. And so looking forward to some more, as Roger, you said, kind of more specific ones in the upcoming months that are more focused on different areas of the system.
Great. Thanks very much. It was really informative.
For sure. Thanks everyone. Yeah. Cheers. Have a good day.
Hey, bye-bye.